Our top 50 Big Ten players series continues. This is part two of a five-part series. You can find part one, numbers 50 through 41, up on the channel already. For today, we're doing 40 through 31. I'm going to read our players' names, and then we have some prompts that we'll each answer individually after that. Starting with number 40, Penn State freshman Caden Mingo. At 39, Washington freshman J.J. Mandequit. 38, Iowa's Alvaro Fulgaris. 37, Northwestern's K.J. Wyndham. 36, Minnesota, Cade Tyson. 35, Purdue Boilermaker Fletcher Lawyer. 34, Indiana point guard Tate Connerway. 33, Michigan point guard Elliot Cadeau. 32, Michigan State point guard Jeremy Fears. 31, Wisconsin big man Nolan Winter. As I work through this, guys, there are buckets in this group, maybe more so than any other group here. You've got the buckets of point guards in the middle, Fears, Cadeau, Connerway. You got the bucket of the shooters, Fletcher Lawyer, Cade Tyson. You got the bucket of some breakout candidates, Wyndham, Fulgaris. And then you've got the bucket of the two true freshman point guards, Mandequit and Mingo. I think we can understand why and justify why we kind of sequenced this the way we did. There might be a lot of debate on certain orders. Mandequit ahead of Mingo for one, how we stack Fears, Cadeau, Connerway for another, what to do with Fletcher Lawyer is one of the biggest questions we have with this entire list. Ultimately, he lands at 35, one spot ahead of Cade Tyson. Let's start with this. To you, Jay Hart, first. Which player in this group is too low?
Too low. I think too low probably would have to be Fletcher. I know we talked about this a little bit off the air. I think he's just a little bit better than 35. I think he is what he is, and what he is an elite third option who's one of the best shooters in the country this year. I think that inherently that has a lot of value even when he's not doing a ton else. I think, and I'm not really willing to let a poor shooting night in an exhibition game kind of skew my view of Fletcher. This is the same guy who's given elite defenses like Tennessee 27 before. He had a fantastic first half against Houston, carried the offensive load for a good stretch of that game to start last year in the Sweet 16. And I think that his limitations spoke louder than his abilities in the exhibition game. And I think that won't speak true very much this year. And so I think that he's kind of the guy that I see in that group that is a little underrated. But I think that this is one of my kind of favorite groups on the entire list. I think this 10 is really, really well kind of placed.
Where would you have put Fletcher?
I think I would have put Fletcher kind of on the front end of that top 30 up in the Nick Boyd, Devin. I apologize. I
It's
kind of
okay.
gave away number 30 there, but
Damn it, Jay Hart.
I think I
Yeah.
would have put him in the Jeremy Fears, Nolan Winter area. I think that he at his peak is a guy who can give you 20, and I'm not sure how necessary he is to scheme up shots for him. I think he can get a little bit of his own off the ball, especially playing off a guy like Braden. I think he's kind of in a perfect situation for him at the moment, playing with Braden and TKR, and I think that kind of carries over into another productive year.
Jay Hart may have just lost his video privileges forever. I'm just kidding, Jay Hart. I'm just kidding. One spoiler for our next video. Yeah, look, Fletcher is probably the most divisive placement on this entire top 50. Maybe I'll be proven wrong in future videos, but we really spent like an hour debating where do we put this guy because originally we had him probably 10 spots higher. The hard part for me with that as we started to do this is you watch a guy like Jeremy Fears play like 33 minutes. I think he's going to have a true breakout first option type season. You watch Elliot Cadeau has 9 assists in back-to-back games for Michigan. There's just some guys that will be in situations that will ask more of them that do a little bit more than what Fletcher does. I think ultimately you're right. His value is not measured in stuffing the stat sheet. His value is measured in some things that don't show up there. He's been sensational. Winning should be a part of this too. But in the end, we landed collectively between the three of us, putting him right behind that group of point guards, Fears, Cadeau, Connerway. That feels right to me, but I can certainly see why someone would disagree with that. Carter, who's too low on this list?
Oh, so I did not meaning to do this, any chance by as far as just picking the person that's completely next to the one Jay Hart picks, but this is who I wanted to pick. I think it is Tatum Conaway for me, just because look, I think the role that Conaway is going to play next to Wilkerson and DeVries, really the only shortcoming, at least that I have seen. Now I know it's a little bit different in his previous stop, but it's really jumper oriented. I think he has all the intangible things. I think he has shown at moments in the preseason that when the jumper's falling, he's this 23-year-old gamer dog, do it all point guard that I think kind of fits in well as the third guy, kind of next to the other two. And for me, too, with Conaway, he's a guy that I think affects the game, even though the jumper's not falling. So when you have a guy that's making shots on his team, he's a guy that can get you steals, blocks, assists, gamer type situations where I think that I actually believe the jumper comes along a little bit in like as he's like this 23-year-old point guard who's played hella college basketball. I just think he ends up being maybe a little bit closer to like a, I don't know, let's call it top 28 player in the league, maybe even 25. I want to get cute.
Okay. All right. I see that pitch as well. I'm going to take the lowest rated guy in this group, Caden Mingo. I think there's two guys in this tier that are going to be first options on their team. One is Cade Tyson. I think we appropriately ranked Cade Tyson. But I think Caden Mingo, like if all goes well at Penn State a year from now, I think he's top 15 on this list. I don't think that's crazy. He's looked the part to me. Card, I know you're not a Mingo guy. I'm curious if you'll bring him up in the next category here. But to me, he's just really dynamic. I think he's a big time defender. Mike Rhodes has been effusive in his praise of how he's their leader. We're going to do everything through him the same way they played through Ace Baldwin. He might be a more dynamic offensive player than Ace Baldwin, point blank. And I think they want him for 2 years because I think the pitch is, hey, tell my bro to come with me and let's play together next year at Penn State. I think he's going to do some really good things, even if Penn State's not very good this year. Next up, the opposite. Which player is too high on this list? Jay Hart.
I'm gonna start kind of at the top of this list, and this one was probably the hardest question of that group of three questions for this, kind of group of 10 guys. I think a lot of these guys are very appropriately rated. I think to get nitpicky though, it'd probably be Jeremy Fears for me. I think that last year he got a lot of credit for success in a way that I'm not sure he deserved over, a lot like some of the other guards. I'm not sure that Jeremy Fears brought more to last year's Michigan State than Trey Holloman did, for example. And so I think that projecting him to have this awesome breakout year and being even ahead of a guy like Elliot Cadeau, who I think has some similar kind of drawbacks to him, I just think Fears is probably just a little bit too high. I'd probably push him a few spots down. I think that he's probably the third favorite of mine out of that group of 3 point guards with him, Cadeau, and Connerway. And I think that's the nitpicky spot where I'd say he's a little bit too high for me.
Card, is his statement that last year Fears got some credit that maybe he didn't deserve, maybe Holloman deserved more. Is that fair to you?
I like where we're at. If that's the way we're going to approach it, yeah.
Okay. All right. Just fact checking. Cart, what's your answer for the guy that's too high?
Fletcher Lawyer, piss off, Jay Hart. No, I'm kidding. It's not Fletcher Lawyer. Not going to get personal on this one. I'm not sure if you guys were able to tune into the Northwestern Iowa State exhibition. Were you able to by any chance?
I watched, yeah.
Did I miss something? What happened to KJ Wyndham?
Got nothing for you.
I'm officially scared. KJ Wyndham played 6 minutes in the exhibition game, and even outside of that, a lot of my projection for KJ Wyndham was in the moments last year. I was a big fan of his in the preseason tour. I was a big fan of like the moments he had during the Northwestern season, and I'm kind of looking as like who's the Robin to Martinelli's Batman? Because to me, Northwestern always has two guys, right? It's like Boo Booey and somebody else. And then it was Barnheiser and Martinelli. Now Martinelli's the main one. Who's the next guy? I thought it'd be KJ Wyndham. Trey Singleton might be a guy. Jay Hart, I mean, you're a Purdue fan. Trey Singleton was maybe a Purdue lean at some points. I like the way he looked. I even like the way the transfer Arrington Page looked. And the fact that KJ Wyndham came off the bench, even in an exhibition game, I'm not sure if there's an injury thing I'm missing here. If I am, I'm completely sorry on this. But just from that, maybe overreaction alone, I just did not like that Wyndham was off the bench. I also didn't like, I like what I saw from some other Northwestern guys where I think Wyndham might get lost in the shuffle a little bit. So I feel like I'm, yeah, 40, what was it, 40?
We're in the
Sorry,
30s.
30s. A little bit too high for my liking. Sorry.
37. Okay, totally fair. Yeah. If we're overreacting one way or the other, Secret Scrimmage's Wyndham didn't do anything. So that's a data point. I think Alvaro Filgueras could be off this list at the end of the year. I think he's getting the Ben McCollum bump, as I like to call it. Everyone wants to convince us that Iowa is just loaded with talent and Bennett Sturts is great. I think a lot of these guys are lucky to play with Bennett Sturts this year. Iowa's gotten boat raced every time they've played a competitive basketball game in the preseason. Fulgaris has not looked the part whatsoever. In a lot of ways, I think the pitch here is he's Iowa Reed Bailey. Look how skilled he is. He can do everything. What if he can't? What if he's not a high major player? I think Sturts is great, but I don't think Sturts' teammates should automatically be on this list just because Iowa's going to ask them to do a lot. Fulgaris is someone I would have personally left off entirely. Let's end with this. The guy in this group you are most curious about. Who is it, Jay Hart?
I'm gonna go right to the top of the list and pick Nolan Winter out. I was very high on Nolan Winter coming into this exercise. He is one of those guys who I think has a lot of potential. He's one of those super skilled Wisconsin bigs. I think you could see him, kind of turn into this really fun offensive big. And I think he provides some real rim protection in a way that, some of these more skilled offensive bigs like a Christoph Tilly might not. In a way that I think he could become, this 32-minute a game guy at Wisconsin and even, potentially sneak onto the back end of an all conference list. I think talking about a 7-footer with as much upside as he has offensively, as much skill there, as much mobility there too. I know Carter, I believe you're the one who always mentions, 7-footers who can walk, don't grow on trees. And he's a 7-footer who can run. So I have a lot of intrigue by Nolan Winter, but I do think that there's some real steps that need to be taken, game film wise and in game that would have to happen for him to make that jump. And that's why I
Rap.
think he's kind of the most intriguing player to me.
Rap, the other Wisconsin big, looks pretty good right now too. So like, how do those two share the front court is going to be an interesting conversation for me. Cart, your answer.
Daniel Sprinkle. I'm looking at you, by the way, because for me, it's JJ Mandaquit. Because if we were just making, like, if I think there's a real world where if Mandaquit's handed the keys to this Washington team, and take keys however the way you want to, because there are other talented players on this roster. Mandaquit's a winner. He can pass the hell out of the basketball. And like you picture a world where like Mandaquit's basically running the show for the rest of this team. I just don't know what it's going to look like. So that's the intrigue to me. Like, is it going to be I'm going to lean into the Yates, the Claws, the Kamari Petersons of the world, or am I going to just trust myself, trust it to this freshman who, look, he was going after some really big schools too, and he ended up choosing Washington. I think there's a world where I'm just very intrigued to see what Mandaquit looks like and what his role is with Washington. Because I think if he gets a massive role, he could skyrocket up this list. He could also be off it if they just lean into like the whole, oh, I want to run back USC's backcourt from last season because that was so awesome.
I think it helps him that he's coming in with another freshman in Steinbach, who, like, identity wise, maybe Sprinkles like, these are my guys. That we're going to turn the corner. These are my guys. If there was a most surprising individual performance in these exhibitions, I think Mandaquit's 12 assist game is probably the answer. It got him on this list. Car, you insisted that we put him over Caden Mingo. I think that will surprise a lot of people just because Mingo's guaranteed to have a role that Mandaquit is not. Why did you insist that Mandaquit's ahead of Mingo?
Because I trust that Danny Sprinkle is going to see the light.
Okay, you think he's special?
Yeah. And I also think, I truly believe that Caden Mingo is going to win 4 games this season.
It's probably true. I would like this on record. I've said it a couple times, but clip me, please. I think the JJ Mandaquit might be freshman Braden Smith. I think he is giving me a lot of those same vibes of like, we don't really think he's going to be good enough for a role. And then he just shows up in day one. He's 10 assists a game. And you're like, wait a second, what? My curiosity answer, I think, has to be my starting point guard, Elliot Cadeau. I feel like he's the only guy in this group we haven't singled out. And it really genuinely was my answer. He was a really tough one to place here. I know we even debated, like, should he be ahead of Fears or not? I ultimately argued not. I think Fears and the defensive stability he brings you, physically, tenacity wise, is just at a different level than Cadeau. With that said, being the starting point guard in a Dusty May offense next to Yaxel Lendeborg, Ade Mara, and Merez Johnson is pretty much a dream job for any good passer. Like, he could put up some insane assist numbers this year. And if Michigan's really good, it's largely going to be because Cadeau's really good. So this is one of those ones. There's a world we look back and like he should have been top 15. There's also a world where it's a disaster and he falls completely out of the top 50. Early returns make me think he's got a real good chance this year, but we shall see. There you have it. That's part 2 of a 5-part series. Please click subscribe. Make sure you see them all.